Go to your kitchen and pick up a knife. Any knife. The cheap one you use for everything. Feel the weight of it. That object is older than you think. Older than farming. Older than fire. Older than language. Older, and this is the part that gets me, than our species. Humans did not invent the knife. We were born into a world that already had one. Somebody else made the first one. And that somebody was not quite a person yet. So how did humans invent the knife? The honest answer is that we did not. We inherited it. And the story of how that happened is one of the strangest things in the whole history of life on Earth. Let's start with what a knife actually is, because we need to strip away everything modern about it. Forget the handle. Forget the steel. A knife is one thing only. A thin edge that separates material. Everything else is decoration. And here is the problem that edge solves. Your body is badly equipped. Look at your teeth. They are flat, small, and weak. You cannot bite through hide. You cannot tear raw muscle off a bone. A wolf can. A lion can. You cannot. Your fingernails are useless. Your jaw is embarrassing compared to almost every other animal your size. If you were dropped naked into the wild next to a dead antelope, you would starve standing right on top of a mountain of food. That was the situation our ancestors were in. Surrounded by meat they could not get into, and then somebody solved it in the simplest way possible. They hit one rock with another rock. When you strike certain types of stone at the right angle, it does not shatter randomly. It breaks in a curved sheet, and the edge of that break is thinner than anything in nature. Sharper than a wolf's tooth. Sharper, in some cases, than a modern surgical blade. That is not an exaggeration. Obsidian, which is volcanic glass, breaks into an edge only a few molecules thick. Some surgeons still use obsidian blades today because the cut heals cleaner. So the first knife was not built. It was released, it was already inside the rock, and someone figured out how to let it out. So when did this happen? The oldest stone tools we have found come from a site called Lomekwi in Kenya, and they are 3.3 million years old. Read that again. 3.3 million. Our species is about 300,000 years old. These tools are more than 10 times older than us. They were made by something that was not human. Probably a small-brained ancestor with a face that would look wrong to you. And that is the reveal at the center of this whole story. The knife is not a human invention. The knife came first. We showed up later and found it already lying there. For a long time, the oldest tools we knew about were younger than that. They came from Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania, around 2.6 million years old. Archaeologists call them Oldowan tools, and they look like almost nothing. If you saw one on the ground, you would walk straight past it. A fist-sized rock with a few chips knocked off one side. That is the artifact. But do not let the simplicity fool you. Making one of those is much harder than it looks. Modern archaeologists have tried repeatedly, and most people are terrible at it on the first attempt. You have to pick the right stone, because most rocks will not break the way you need. You have to strike at the correct angle. Too flat and nothing happens. Too steep and it crumbles. You have to hit hard enough and in the right spot. And crucially, you have to be able to look at a lump of rock and see the edge hiding inside it before you swing. That last part is not a physical skill. That is imagination. Now here is where it gets genuinely interesting, because the knife did not just feed our ancestors, it changed their bodies. Think about what happens when you can cut meat. Suddenly you do not need huge teeth, because the blade does the tearing. You do not need a heavy jaw, because the food arrives already in pieces. Over a very long time, teeth got smaller, jaws got lighter, the heavy chewing muscles that anchor to the skull got weaker, and when those muscles stopped clamping down on the skull was free to grow. Some researchers think this is one of the reasons our brains got bigger. Not the only reason, but part of it. The blade took over a job the body used to do. Meat is dense in calories, and a big brain is expensive. It is only about 2% of your body weight, but it burns roughly 20% of your energy. You cannot run a brain like that on leaves. Cutting tools opened up a food source rich enough to pay for it. So the knife did not just help us survive. There is a reasonable argument that the knife helped build the mind that is watching this video right now. And then, around 1.7 million years ago, something changed. Up to that point, tools were functional and ugly. Then a new kind appears, and it is different in a way that is hard to explain. It is called the Acheulean handaxe. Teardrop-shaped, worked on both faces, symmetrical. And it shows up across Africa, Europe, and Asia in the same shape for over 1 million years. Think about that. A million years of people making the same object the same way. No other human technology has ever lasted that long. Not writing, not the wheel, nothing. But here is the puzzle that has bothered archaeologists for decades. Many of these hand axes are more symmetrical than they need to be. The symmetry does not make them cut better. Some were never used at all, based on the wear on the edges. Some are enormous. There is one from England over 30 centimeters long that would be useless in an actual hand. So why make it? Nobody knows for certain. One idea is that it was a display. You are showing other people that you have the patience, the skill, and the eye to make something difficult, which would make the hand axe one of the first objects ever made to impress someone. Another idea is simpler and sadder. It is just what people were taught, passed down and copied for 50,000 generations without anyone questioning it. Either way, something important is happening here. Somebody cared what the tool looked like. That is not survival anymore. That is the beginning of taste. Now let's talk about what the blade actually did to how people lived, because this is the part that gets skipped. A knife is not just a tool for eating. A knife is a tool for making other things. With a sharp edge, you can scrape a hide clean, and a clean hide becomes clothing, and clothing means you can walk into cold places that would have killed you. You can carve wood into a spear and hunt something bigger than yourself. You can strip bark for cord. You can cut a fishing net, you can shape a bone into a needle, and sew fitted clothing instead of draping a skin over your shoulders. Almost nothing else humans made in the next 2 million years was possible without a blade first. The knife is the tool that makes tools. And there is another side to it that we should be honest about. The knife is also the first weapon. The same edge that opens an animal opens a person. There is no version of this story where that is not true. Some of the oldest evidence of violence between humans involves cutting injuries on bone. The blade gave us clothing, shelter, food, and craft. It also gave us an efficient way to kill each other, and we have never given that back. That deal was struck long before anyone was around to ask if it was worth it. So how did we get from a sharp rock to the thing in your kitchen drawer? For a very long time, the answer was nothing. Stone stayed the best cutting material on Earth for millions of years. Then, around 5,000 years ago in the Middle East, people worked out how to get copper out of rock by heating it. Copper is soft, and honestly a copper knife is worse than a good flint one. But copper can be poured into a shape and remelted when it breaks. Stone cannot. Once a stone blade snaps, it is gone. So metal won, not because it was sharper, but because it was forgiving. Then somebody discovered that adding a small amount of tin to copper makes something much harder. That is bronze, and it is a strange invention because copper and tin are rarely found in the same place. Getting both meant trade over enormous distances. So a bronze knife is not only a tool, it is evidence of a supply chain. Then iron. Iron is everywhere, but it needs much higher heat to work, so it arrived later. Around 3,200 years ago, it spread, and it changed who could own a blade. Bronze was expensive and limited. Iron was ordinary. Suddenly a farmer could have a good knife. After that, the story is mostly refinement. Add carbon to iron in the right amount and you get steel, which holds an edge far longer. Different regions developed their own methods, some closely guarded, some producing blades so good the techniques became legendary. But underneath it, nothing fundamental changed. It is still a thin edge that separates material. The idea that came out of that rock in Kenya 3.3 million years ago is exactly the idea sitting in your kitchen right now. The material changed. The concept never did. So how did humans invent the knife? We did not. That is the answer. The oldest cutting tools on Earth were made by something that was not us, more than 3 million years ago. We were born into a world where the knife already existed, the same way you were born into one that already had the wheel and the alphabet. It was waiting for us. And then it shaped us. It made our teeth smaller, our jaws lighter, and quite possibly our brains bigger. It let us survive winters. It let us make every other tool we have ever made. And it gave us an efficient way to hurt each other, which we still have. Here is the part that stays with me. Every single knife that has ever existed is a copy of a copy of a copy, running in an unbroken chain back to one specific moment. Somebody in East Africa hit a rock with another rock and looked at what came off. They were probably just hungry. They were not trying to change anything. And tonight, when you pick up a knife to cut something for dinner, you will repeat a gesture older than your species, older than language, and older than every idea humans have ever had. You will not think about it for a second. That is how good the invention was.